Tonight, our speaker is Fewell. So Jesse is a coach, author, trainer who helps senior leaders transform their organizations to achieve more innovation, collaboration, and business agility. He taught, keynoted, and coached thousands of leaders across 13 countries and 5 continents. His newest book, Untapped Agility, is out now, and it is there to help leaders to transform their transformation. And this is not all, but I'm not gonna go forward with this, so I really wanna give the mic to Jesse. All yours.
Thank you, Areb. I'm super excited to be here to join the Lean Agile Network. You guys are super cool with your LinkedIn post with all of the words about what does it take for Agile transformation. And that's what we want to talk about. We want to talk about how do we push the ball forward, kick the can forward, or push the ball forward to making our organizations better when nobody is getting it and nobody's on board and they're doing it wrong. And all these other barriers, it's just, oh my goodness. Oh, we're going to talk about it today. So I'm super passionate and eager to share the story. Here's the key point. The one message I have for everybody tonight. Your transformation is not a failure. It has only just begun. You know, as Agile champions, as Lean champions, as those of us who are deeply passionate or curious or kind of moving forward on this, it can get really frustrating. It can get really discouraging when you look around and you don't see the future state that you so meaningfully want to make happen. You've been on this for 6 months, 12 months, maybe a couple of years, and you're just not seeing what you wish you were seeing. And so I'm here to tell you, you're not a failure. It's not a failure. It's a journey. And it's a journey that takes a lot of effort and a lot of time. And we want to share a few thoughts tonight to help us move forward with confidence and with a little bit more energy. So let's talk a little bit about it. I'm Jesse, and as you heard in the intro, I do this Agile thing in a variety of different contexts, countries, and industries. I got my start with the Project Management Institute as someone who was helping introduce these Agile techniques into the traditional project management community. So I know a thing or two about resistance to change and about the traditional mindsets, not wanting to let go. So I've seen that in a couple of contexts. And I also am a coach with the Scrum Alliance. So I got a few things to share about this thing. Here's the agenda. We're going to start with a story, and that story is going to lead into the untapped agility pattern. And that pattern involves barriers, all of the things I mentioned before. They're not getting it. They're doing it wrong. It's just us and nobody else. And then we're going to talk about the rebound that takes us beyond those barriers. And there's a rebound move specific to Agile practices. There's a rebound move specific to having the right kind of impact. And then I'm going to give you some free goodies, free stuff, like with no money, free. So that's the agenda that we've got set up for us tonight. And the good news is that this content, that this presentation, these ideas are helpful to any change leader, any Agile Lean leader at any level, regardless of your title. So you might be, Ted, the team lead, where you don't have a fancy title. You're maybe that senior analyst or that senior tester, and you believe strongly in these Agile things, but you don't have the fancy title. Well, you're an influencer. You're the one that people look up to on a lot of this stuff. Maybe you're the first person trying it out. Or maybe you're more like Maria, the manager, who's a PMO leader or a department manager, and you do have budget, and you do have direct reports. Or maybe you're, Emmett the executive, or you were Emmett the executive once upon a time, where you are a leader of other leaders. Because what we're seeing a lot of times is that it doesn't matter what level in the organization you're at, you still feel the same passions around this if you're the first ones to champion it, if you're the first ones to try it. And one of the things I've seen in talking to organizations across the world is that there's always somebody at a given level of the organization that's a little bit further leaning than their peers. So you might be surrounded by a number of team members or individual contributors that aren't as passionate about this as you are, but so is your boss. Or if you are the boss, so is your senior leader. Or if you are the senior leader, guess what? We're all in this together as change champions and change agents. So let's start with that story. I want to tell a story about a media company that for a couple of years had a super creative CEO that led an unprecedented explosion in the 70-year history of the media company in creative ideas. Let's shoot some TV footage. Let's build an award-winning mobile app. Let's get a lot of cool partners and distribution channels and lots of great ideas. Except it was too creative. It was too much. It was too fast. And people were getting burned out because as soon as one project started, they get yanked over onto this other project and they're like, but what? Oh, go ahead. Just, do it in your spare time. And wait a second. And then all of these new technologies were being added, a new website and a new landing page, and it became technology junk. And people were hiring like mad to get all these projects done. And there was this unequal org chart and compensation was unequal and all of it. People were bitter and burned out. And so finally, the ownership said they had enough and they fired the CEO and they brought in Luis, who was a transformation consultant. And they said, fix this. And he had an idea. He said, you know what? I can't use the same strategy as my predecessor. My predecessor strategy was to seize opportunities, lots of creativity, lots of ideas, and lots of burnout and lots of fragmentation. And he said, I can't do that. I can't fix all of the problems at once. And he had a backlog, a transformation backlog that was a mile long. Fix the HR policies, reconcile the technology stack, monetize that web app, monetize the mobile app. All of this stuff was just broken. And so he said, I'm only going to fix the things I can fix right now. And I'm going to do a long play on some of the more painful issues around org structure, around vision. That stuff was big and it's going to take more time. And some of the people didn't like the fact that he was going to take his time on some of the things they wanted. So they left. But the few things he did choose, he knocked them out. And then he went on to the next thing and knocked him out. And he went on to the next thing and knocked it. And over the course of a year, things started turning around significantly because he used a completely different transformation strategy than the previous leader. And it's a pattern. So maybe you're like Ted, the team lead, and you're the one that does everything. And so you're going to seize opportunities. You're going to fix one thing while you're doing another. Maria, the manager, said, the customer sense, we got to add this in and we got to add value to customer, be responsive. And then, your senior executive coming in saying, we got to get competitive, seize opportunities. I mean, that's how you get ahead, by getting ahead, right? Well, eventually you just start falling behind where my backlog is infinite. We need more resources. It's not enough people. We need more. And every day we keep slipping dates and it's just not looking good. And I thought this is the recipe for success, was to do stuff, right? Except we're always behind. So what do? Well, the answer is do the opposite and start saying no. Stop saying yes because you've done that already and do the thing that you haven't done yet. Say no. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is the untapped agility pattern. What do I mean by saying no? I mean, that doesn't sound very, it doesn't sound very agile. It doesn't sound very growth mindset-y. Well, here's the thing. Do you need to be involved in every single thing? Do you have FOMO, fear of missing out? Well, maybe you want to be, but you absolutely should not be fragmenting yourself, diluting your impact. Likewise, should we deliver every feature of every project that anyone ever asks for? Probably not. We don't have enough capacity. There's never enough capacity to meet the demand that exists in an organization or in a market. And so similarly, should we transform everything at once? No, we're going to blow straight through all of our team members' change tolerance. And so there comes a point where we start have to mastering a certain discipline of saying no to the right things at the right time, or saying no to the wrong things that are or the right things at the wrong time, or the wrong things at the right time. You know what I'm talking about. Well, okay, well, which things should we do agile? Okay, if I don't transform everything at once, if I don't agile everything at once, where should we agile? Well, good news is we've talked about that. The Harvard Business Review popularized the innovation ambition matrix several years ago. And what they found was that there are three core regions. Well, there's your, well, three core. There are three key regions, and the core is the first one. That's the cash cow. That's the keep the lights on. That's the one that is straightforward, simple. We know where it is. We know how to win. Don't need a lot of agility there because there's not a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity and change in the everyday, day-to-day core. It's the expansion out into the unknown of maybe same stakeholders, new offerings, or same offerings, new stakeholders. That's where we have a little bit more uncertainty, ambiguity, and change, and we need a little bit of agility there. Never mind the transformational region where we're going into both new stakeholders, markets, customers, and new offerings at the same time. That's big change. That's big uncertainty, volatility, and change. And we need a lot more agile there than we do there. And they did some research and asked these organizations, what's the blend here? And the average they found was 70% of your funding and your resources and your staff should be in the core. 70% of your agile energy, 70% of your resources, and it should be in the core. 20% should be in the adjacent, 10% on average tend to be in the transformational sector. Now there's a variation depending on the industry and the sector that you're in. So if you're a tech startup, then by definition, you're totally transformational. But different people have different blends of change. And so therefore, you shouldn't be using Agile everywhere. Here's another grid that if we were to map all of the work that we do into two different dimensions, what we're doing versus how we're doing it. Well, if there isn't a lot of uncertainty in either one, that's pretty simple. It's pretty obvious. It's kind of like day-to-day operations. And so we just categorize the incoming need into standard operating procedures. We categorize this known thing into a known response. On the other extreme, there's complete chaos where I don't know what's coming in at any given moment. I don't know how we're going to deal with it. Well, in those cases, those are emergencies. And in those cases, you just respond. You know, like when a house is on fire, is that a good time to have a daily stand? The house is on fire. Let's have a daily stand-up. It's maximum 15 minutes. What have we recently done to stop the fire? And are there any impediments to stopping the fire? No, we got to act. It's the messy middle where we need agility. It's that ambiguous, complicated, and complex mishmash of stuff that's kind of known but not too crazy. Maybe we know a lot about what we're doing, but we have no idea how to do it, or vice versa. And so projects tend to be a little bit more in that adjacent region, but then transformations tend to be much more in that complex region. And that's where we need the agility the most. The bottom line, do not transform everything all at once. Do not use Agile everywhere. You'll burn out. You'll dilute your message as well as your energies and your momentum. So that's the pattern. Seizing opportunities gets you. It moves you forward. So yeah, let's use Agile for that project. Let's use Agile for this one team. Let's use it for this and that. And then eventually you start going and going and going until finally you're always behind. At some point, you got to start saying, whoa. And that rebound leans against the logic and the energy of the boost, the thing that initiated some transformational momentum in the first place. And this is the pattern. It happens over and over and over again, that we get started, we get stuck, and we have to try something different to get going again. We got a couple more things to share, but before we do, we want to understand a little bit more what is holding us back. Because shouldn't a good strategy just be a good strategy? Shouldn't good change management or good transformation and good coaching be enough? What's getting in the way? What gets in the way of agility? Well, we've been asking that question for many, many years, and it turns out we already know the answer. We've known it for a long time, what gets in the way of agility. And when I took a look at all the different surveys from different organizations, just in the last few years, last 4 years or so, here's the pattern. What's holding us back? Number one, most common pattern is culture and structure. Culture and structure. It shows up most commonly in most of the surveys. And so it makes a lot of sense, right? That the thing that gets in the way of becoming an agile organization is the organization itself. The thing that needs to change is the thing that prevents the change. That makes a lot of sense. But also, we don't have enough budget. We don't have enough expertise. We certainly don't have enough leadership support. And our current state is way too complex and inconsistent, which means that a lot of our Agile becomes complex and inconsistent. And so there's a number of these patterns that keep coming up over and over and over again. And that can be super empowering to those of us who are change agents to know, so that when it happens to us, we're like, I knew this was going to happen because I'm trying to make things better. And wouldn't you know, existing roles and responsibilities are coming back saying, no, I don't want to get better. I know what my job is. And if you're going to change my job, I don't know if I add value anymore. And that can be threatening and frightening. And so I'm going to be hesitant to jump on your Agile lean train. But at least we knew that was going to happen. So these are the patterns, and we've pulled out from those patterns a few key examples that I think resonate with a lot of people. And so we'll start, we'll talk about two more to kind of explore this pattern a little bit more. So we've talked about the barriers, and each of those barriers comes with a rebound move. And the first one we talked about, master no, is a good way to get past the barrier of being overcommitted and always behind. And so we're going to talk about throw the textbook away. What is he talking about? And give the transformation away. No, what's he talking about? It's called foreshadowing. So let's get into it. The next rebound move, if you want more Agile, throw the Agile textbook away. No, that's not true. Let me tell you a story. Mike was hired as the lead Agile lean transformation lead, the lead at a publishing company. And when I talked to him, he told me the story how he was taking over his predecessor who left in utter frustration. His predecessor was championing the scaled Agile framework, and he was going to do a big rollout. He spent 2 years pushing and people weren't having it. And so he gave up in frustration 2 years later. Mike shows up and he's like, there's a lot of good stuff here. Look at this. We have cross-functional teams collaborating. Look at this. Everyone's aligned on a consistent cycle, a 2-week cadence that leads into a release cadence. Oh. And they flattened the organization where there were fewer layers of management. He's like, this scaled Agile thing had an impact. All right. But the more he started looking into it, the more he started hearing more and more problems about people saying, you know what? I'm the Scrum Master, and that means you have to listen to me about what Agile is, and Agile means this because I'm the Scrum Master. And then somebody would say, well, I'm the product owner, and you're not allowed to talk to that team unless you talk to me. You do not talk to, and no team, don't you dare ever talk to a stakeholder or customer. You talk to me first, and then I'll let you talk. And what he discovered was all of those official titles came with baggage, and they were limiting the creativity and the flexibility of the people to think outside of the textbook rules, and it prevented a lot of good things from happening. So he had a crazy idea. He had an idea, which is, what if we threw away all the titles? What if we completely changed the rules? And so he said, there are no more Scrum Masters in our organization. The role has been eliminated, but you are still very much needed. Here are 3 or 4 different new roles that you can choose from. And everyone lost their minds. What are you talking about? If I'm not a Scrum Master, I don't exist. I'm not a person anymore. It's everything I wanted to be, and now you're taking it away from me. Well, how would you like to add value? Well, I kind of like people, and I would like to, oh, excellent. So would you like to be a team facilitator? Well, isn't it the same as a Scrum Master? Well, is it? What do you think? And now we're creating dialogue. And so by rejiggering all of these roles, what happened was that now the whole team was engaged in conversations around process improvement. It was no longer the perceived exclusive domain of a Scrum Master, which was the perception of the role. So when you remove that perception, now the true conversation that we wanted to have about process improvement started to come forward. Likewise, as soon as you removed product owner and now started coming up with titles like product lead or product manager, now there was a little bit more freedom from their perspective for teams and customers and teams and stakeholders to collaborate directly. Again, it was all perception of what the textbook says. If you were to go to look at the Scrum Guide doesn't say any of those things that they were thinking it did say. It doesn't. It was about perception of the baggage. And so all he did was violate what they perceived to be the official rules of lean agile, and he made them more lean and agile. So here's the way it plays out. We start with best practices. It's a logical, in many cases, the most obvious first step. Let's use a Kanban board. Let's use a daily stand-up meeting. Let's use that given when then template and a public task board and funding review boards. We're introducing new ideas with industry literature to support it. Makes a lot of sense. And yet at some point, it's going to get really annoying because they're doing it wrong. Just do it. And I know each one of us, like, you know what I'm talking about. These user stories are not user stories. And these Kanban boards are stale. And there's too many things on it. It doesn't make any sense. And these funding review boards aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. It's so at some point, it's time to take ownership of your agility and throw the textbook away. A lot of the literature that I've seen and talked to, that I've seen, and some of the experts I've talked to say, until you truly create a proprietary internal playbook in your organization for lean agile techniques, you're going to have a lot of people arguing over which framework and which method and which technique. As soon as you start letting go of what the industry says and start internalizing into what we need, it's still going to be really frustrating until you throw the textbook away. Two reasons why best practices tend to conflict with reality. One is the concept of growth, and the other is the concept of context. So with growth, there's a disconnect between expectations and reality. It's my favorite meme, expectations and reality. So The expectation for a Honda is that you use the manual, RTFM, read the manual. And with RTFM, you're supposed to operate the vehicle this way, use the adjustments this way. But my 15-year-old son, who's just now learning how to drive, he studied the textbook, but do you think he's going to be really thinking about all of the different knobs and switches and the air conditioner and the lights when he's trying to not die going out on his first or second trip ever in front of the wheel? And so in many, I might be holding on tight to the textbook, but at some point we have to recognize that people are just trying to get through their day. They're just trying to figure out how to survive. They don't really thinking about 15-minute daily stand-up. They're not really thinking about that. They're thinking about, can I get out of this meeting without being yelled at? So crawl, walk, run means that there's an expectation gap between where people are beginning in their journey versus where the expert, the leader, or the person who came up with the process assumes and desires. And then there's the charts. Everyone loves a good hockey stick chart, and not just Canadians. Hockey sticks are for everybody. You start here and you go there. It's that simple. Growth, success, except all growth follows a J curve. This is a phenomenon that occurs over and over again in the human experience. In finance, first, you got to spend money before you make money. In nation building, when you start introducing democracy in a dictatorship, stability goes down. And only after a certain amount of time where more democracy is kind of installed, only then more stability comes back into it. There's an entire book called J Curve about this. And then in personal trauma, in personal growth, well, you're moving along and then here comes trauma, boom. And then you come out of it as a better, stronger person. My cousin is a melanoma survivor, and she'll say, I am a stronger person coming on the other side of that. So the same is true with organizations. There's a status quo. Here comes your lean agile, and everyone loses their mind. And you're going to be in the valley of despair for more than 0 days before you start getting back up into the next level. Crawl, walk, run, or actually it's more like crawl, fall, walk, run. By definition, new practices must be done poorly before they are done well. Remember when you first learned how to ride a bike? Remember when you first learned how to write? It wasn't pretty. People need to do lean agile ugly, badly, embarrassingly, before they actually get into a groove. It's the nature of human nature. Also, context is king. My previous job, that behavior-driven development was totally awesome. We should totally do that here. In a completely different context with a completely different industry and a completely different product line, different customers. I like this cartoon where the caterpillar's like, oh, I'm going to be a butterfly. I can't wait to be a butterfly. Oh, look at that really big caterpillar over there. I can't wait to see what kind of butterfly that caterpillar is going to be. And it's not even a caterpillar. It's a completely different context, completely different thing. And so sometimes it can be easy for us to have this mentality of copy paste agility. What worked here must work here, when here and there are not the same. So it's important for us as change advocates to remember that what worked in one place has to be adjusted. It has to be tweaked and tailored. The question is how? How? Because when I read the Agile textbooks, I go to the training, I don't hear a lot of guidance on how to adjust an Agile technique or a lean technique to fit my context. So that's why we have 3P tailoring. First, let's admit that there's pain associated with this technique. You want to try continuous delivery? Well, how about the fact that we can't even get a build done in a day? Or how about the fact that we can't even get everyone to get their stuff in at the same time? It's painful. Okay. Well, what's the purpose around continuous delivery? What's the purpose of this technique? Can we adjust it so that we can get at least some of that value from the technique while recognizing the reality of where we're at in our context? Here's an example. Zoom meetings. Like this one. You know, everybody knows an effective Zoom meeting, everyone turns on their webcam. Right? I'm sorry, I'm noticing not everybody's doing that. Why? Why? Well, I'll tell you why. Because with a 14-hour time difference between all the different offices on this Zoom meeting, some of us are still in bed. Some of us are actually falling asleep in his 14-hour time zone difference. And so, no, you don't want to see me right now. Trust me. Not only that, but with multiple countries and multiple time zones for this Zoom meeting, non-native English speakers are struggling. And you know what they would really appreciate is some written communication channels. So we could copy paste into Google Translate. So, well, what's the purpose of a webcam in the first place? Well, the purpose is to include that nonverbal communication into our dialogues, into our interactions, and to create a human connection with each other. Well, you know what we could do is we could add more fidelity in our communication with some asynchronous chat channels. And if we want to build relationships with each other, we could create a little team wiki and share a photo of us with our favorite pets. And then when we kick off a meeting with audio only, we could say, all right, your favorite dessert, everybody go. And now we're creating a human connection without a webcam. How about that? We just tailored an Agile best practice. You must use your webcam in Zoom with the context. So here's your turn. What is an Agile technique that you see in your environment that everyone's doing wrong? What is driving you crazy? When you see them trying to do a technique, whether it's a daily stand-up that's taking too long, or a retrospective that leads to zero action, or it's user stories that are 3 pages long, go ahead and type into the chat window, what's a technique that you're running into? And then as you're typing it, I'll keep going. And then we'll kind of revisit that a little bit later. So that was the second one. Throw the textbook away. We got one more, and then we'll open up to some dialogue and conversation. You know, when it comes to transformation, if you really want results, let go. I'll tell you what you're talking about. Randy was a consultant who was hired to help kickstart an Agile transformation at a large manufacturing company. And he was super excited to do this kickoff meeting. And he heard at the kickoff meeting, one of the people that was going to be invited was a manager who'd been running Agile for 5 years. And he's like, that's cool. Because, you know, we're going to kickstart this transformation. And it turns out we already have a pocket of Agile that's been like 5 years deep. And so in the middle of the Kickstart workshop, he said, okay, I'd like to now introduce Steve. Steve, you're the manager of this. Tell us, how are you doing? And Steve went on to tell about 2-week sprints and definition of done and cycle time and limited WIP. And every 2 weeks, he's rolling stuff out of his, I mean, he's like, that's fantastic. Well, then for this pilot program that is being run by the PMO, how long will it take you to get something out the door? And he said, without even blinking an eye, half a year. What? What are you talking about? Look at you with your 2-week sprints and iterations. And you're talking to me, it's going to take you a half a year to get anything done? He said, oh, no. We are super agile. We get everything in 2 weeks. But it takes 3 months for us to even get the work because of all the upstream analysis, approvals, and the high-level design, the detailed design, and then the business operations and the concept of operations in the document. And I was like, what are you talking about? Well, then if they do their part, then you're the last stop, right? No. Once we finish our 2 weeks, then we throw it over to those quality people, and then they got to do a review, and then they're gonna the quality assurance review, and then there's the security scan and the security reviews, and then we go through the legal team to make sure that we're not And then there's risk management. Yeah, it takes another 3 months for them to take care of that stuff. And they said, well, we have everybody in the room here. We're trying to make this Agile thing more pervasive. Certainly, you would, certainly it would be excellent if you were to lead us with all of your Agile and invite all these other departments into a collaborative, multi-departmental conversation so that your 2 weeks is a little bit more. And they, no. No, those quality people don't get it. Those product people don't get it. As soon as if we invite all of them, then they're going to mess up the Agile and it's going to be really bad. That manager had a lot of Agile with no agility. So here's the idea. Give it away. Give it away so that it's more than just your cute little department. And now we can actually have a bottom line impact. And this happens over and over and over again, which is change agents take initiative. You are the first one to go. Your team, your product, your department, you're the first one to go. You've got to lead. You've got to start because no one else is going to go until you do. And you take that initiative until you can only go so far by yourself. If only other people would get out of the way. If only other people would get on board and let you be as agile as you could be. And so there comes a point where you have to invite other people to the party and make it less fun. Because now you got stupid ideas coming into the play. And those stupid ideas actually resonate with the people outside your department because it's their context. Here's the expectation. We got this waterfall. We do all the requirements design and build and test all in a row. Well, now we're going to transform. We're going to go to mini waterfalls, also known as incremental delivery, where we do some of the requirements design, build, test, launch. A little bit more requirements design, build, test, launch. Not what's mini waterfall, but at least it's progress. Someday soon, we're going to be super agile where it's all together. Here's the reality. Water scrum fall, where all that upfront requirements, all that upfront design, and then agile, and then all that downstream test and all that downstream launch. Or maybe that requirements manager catches the bug and says, I want me some agile. And that design manager catches the bug. I want me some agile too. So I'm going to look into the design thinking. Yeah, that's it. Or the test person's going to say, oh, I know what we should do. We should do some DevOps. So everybody goes agile all by themselves and nothing's changed at the bottom line. When your agile coach says you're here, beware, because you're probably doing it right. You're probably super collaborative. You're probably totally by the textbook, but in the grand scheme of things, you're one drop in the bucket. And we really need to have a hard conversation about getting more people to drink from the well of awesome than just ourselves. Moreover, there's data from the last year's State of DevOps report that says if you want true transformational results in high-performing technology organizations, you've got to give it away. You want a more organic transformation than organized, which means don't do a big bang approach. The lower performing IT organizations correlate to big bang transformations. Also, that center of excellence, that lean agile center of excellence, yeah, that's common. It also correlates to lower performance than communities of practice who informally trade notes and informally support each other rather than having all the agile people cooped up into a center of excellence by themselves and not actually being on the ground contributing to work. Yeah, that doesn't mean it's all chaos and it's all crazy. The transformation needs to be intentional, which means that whatever pilots that you're doing, whatever you're trying, invest in making those pilots successful and meaningful case studies. You can't just wing it. You can't just hope for a prayer. Be ruthless about making these pockets successful and then be ruthless about empowering them to talk to each other. So this is a powerful little study that came out last year that really turns a lot of the change management and transformation thinking on its head, and says that the next level of agility will not come from us, those of us who initiated it. Those of us initiated it, we got it to the first level, but the next level, it's going to come from them. It's amazing what you can accomplish if you don't care who gets the credit. There's one Agile champion at a bank that I was working with, and she was so agitated that this executive wanted to start an Agile transformation, and that executive wanted to start an Agile transformation. I started it. Don't they see that I'm the one who is making this happen? I'm the one that's making it better. And she just was so bitter that she made this massive contribution and wasn't getting rewarded for the value that she was offering in the organization. And she had a point. She had a point. She was getting a value. And, maybe it was because she was a woman in a financial institution that was predominantly male dominated. Fair enough. Are you willing to move the initiative forward, even in the face of unfairness? Even in the face of everyone else wanting to get credit and doing it their way? That's a tough call. But if you are willing to let go, then it's amazing to see what can actually happen. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are the 3 moves that we have time to cover today. There are 7 of them in the book. So if you want to learn more, please just go to the website. And if you go to the website, you can download right away an entire digital toolkit, which includes a study on those barriers, template for that 3P process. Also, the Agile Leadership Canvas, where we can start talking about how do we craft our culture a little bit. All that stuff is free stuff, digital downloads, which are described and explained in the book. There's also links from the website to your favorite, whether it's Apple Books or Barnes & Noble or Amazon. I don't make any money on the royalties of this. The publisher is a proper publisher. This is me encouraging you to challenge your thinking with some of this stuff. So with that, I think we have a little bit of time for some Q&A.
Thanks, Jesse. That was really great. I love the rebound idea, and I can't wait to see what the other rebounds are. So I'm just looking through the question list here, or the chat channel, and we have a question from Nawaz. Are you still on? Do you want to ask your question? Or maybe not. Okay, so let me ask the question. I'll read it here from the chat channel. Who assumes management responsibilities when Agile roles are dissolved? I believe some sort of management function is still kept. So I think this is kind of around the roles discussion.
Yeah, so what was super provocative about what Mike did at that publishing company was that he offered all of the Scrum Masters and product owners alternative role definitions. And he was intentionally provocative by calling one of those roles a project manager.
Oh.
And another one, a product manager. And what it did is it forced people to say, wait a second, you're taking us backwards. And he's like, no, look, read the expectations. We're expecting you to facilitate dialogue and empowerment. We're not relying on buzzwords, we're relying on intent. And it was actually a turning point in their journey. So absolutely, you still need leadership. We still need product direction, explicitly stating a vision of where we're going. Absolutely, you need facilitation skills to bring different people together in alignment around some assignments and work that needs to be done. Where most professionals get wrapped around the axle and distracted is about the title.
Mm-hmm.
Your role is not your title. The value you bring is not the title you wear. The value you bring is the results on the ground, like getting everybody on the same page, like articulating a vision and a roadmap for your product. Even if your title says product analyst. What is a product analyst? And how's that different than a business analyst? Everybody knows what an industry standard definition is, and why do we have to be different? Because we are. We are. So yes, absolutely, we need to have coverage of management responsibilities, leadership responsibilities. How we do that and what we name it, at some point, your team has to have a hard conversation about that rather than just relying on default definitions.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Okay. He's also got another question here. He says he's not against throwing any textbook away, but don't you think you need to follow the rules of some sort before you break the rules? Don't you need to pick some lightweight approach for your journey, maybe lean startup, Scrum, XP?
That is a super good question, and it's one that got me into a little bit of trouble when I was sharing this presentation at the U.S. Military Academy with about 50, actually it was more like 100 undergraduate students whose entire day-to-day life was about studying textbooks. And here I come saying, throw the textbook away. So Nawaz, the thing that I need to emphasize to everyone is that you throw the textbook away after you've read it. Yes, you need to get grounded in some best practices, some new concepts, some modern techniques. Study that, embrace that, and use it, but it can only take you so far. It can only take you from level 0 to level 1, maybe level 2. But if you want that super awesome team, the best team you've ever worked for, well, the best team you've ever worked for probably was using Agile methods differently than the way that your certification trainer said, differently than the way that book said. So you're totally right. Throw the textbook away after you've used the value from it and you want to go further.
Excellent. Okay, so now we've got about another 5 minutes. I'll open it up for your option. Do you want to ask Jesse some questions directly, or do you want to go through a couple of the scenarios for the, what was it, pain, purpose, pivot?
Oh yeah, I'll do that. Yeah. So I'm going to take a look at that. And if you want to interrupt me, just unmute yourself and go ahead and put an idea out on the floor. So I'm looking at the chat window. There you go.
Yeah, their team doesn't self-organize. That's the first pain, I think, that we got mentioned.
You know, why do they keep looking at me? Shouldn't they be talking to each other? Or another one is estimating in story points that are actually really just man days or person days. And you're like, just know what a story point is. The whole point is to avoid all of that. Oh, it's so frustrating. Well, why do we do story points? Well, because estimating in time creates pressure. It creates a lot of, when I was doing your job, it only took me half the man days that you're saying it. And so we tend to overinflate or analysis paralysis. That's the pain. And the value of the story points was to create an abstraction so that we would avoid a lot of that baggage and to create a more collaboration. So a pivot might be, we'll continue to use man days, man hours, because that's what that's the currency our organization understands. However, we will only have one key number, which is the sum total of every team member's contribution. And every team member gets to weigh in on the man day estimate of this activity versus this activity. So it's at least collaborative. So that might be one way where we could adjust estimation techniques to avoid the pain of confusing story points, but recognize the purpose of collaborative estimation. That's just one thought. Managers who insist on interrupting the daily scrum. Yeah, that's agitating. And then a good leadership coach would, a good agile coach or leadership coach would ask that leader, did you notice next time you come in, stand outside or jump into the Zoom call with your video turned off and just listen. And then when you show up, notice if anything changes and why that might be. And maybe have a one-on-one with your most trusted junior member and say, what's going on? Why do people silence as soon as I show into the room? And I just want to be a part of the fun. Now you understand why the manager keeps jumping in, because they want to be a part of the fun. They want to be a part of the awesome. That's one example. There's plenty of other scenarios. These are good stuff. These are good things. Good things, guys. Hanan asks a powerful question. How could you not care about not getting credit? I mean, if the whole point of being a professional is to add value and to do a good job, then who wouldn't want to be recognized for that? And I totally agree. You want to be recognized for the good work that you do, but you don't want to get in your own way. And that's what happened with the one woman I mentioned at the bank, and that's what happened with the other manager at the manufacturing company. Is they were so concerned about having control of the Agile, they limited the value they could offer the organization, and therefore limited their own recognition opportunity. And so the people who should know, they'll know who started this thing. I think we've hit the top of the hour. I don't want to keep people too far away from their evenings, but please, please, please reach out to me through any of these channels. I'm passionate about helping any Agile Lean champion thrive and succeed. That's what I do full time, and we could talk about this stuff for hours.
Thank you very much, Jesse. And this is really great. I found myself a lot of times in my head saying like, yes, yeah, do that too. Oh, ouch. It's not me only. That's okay. So
you are not alone.
Yeah, that's nice. Nice to know that. So yeah, this is an indeed interesting journey for all of us, and thank you very much for sharing those insights with us today. And thanks everyone for being part of this. If you are not part of the Lean Agile Network yet, you can follow us in LinkedIn, in Twitter, sign up with us in Slack, and stay tuned in because we have nice stuff coming up.